Do you ever see an animation and it immediately makes you want to open up your 3D program and see if you could figure it out? Well, that usually happens when I'm watching these new Apple videos, but this one really grabbed my attention. I'm sure it's not exactly how the original was done, but I think I got pretty close. Let me show you a quick breakdown of the scene file. All right, here we are in Cinema 4D, and let me break the scene down for you. Now, before we jump on in here, I wanted to give a shout out to anyone that works at Apple and does motion design. Your stuff's awesome. I know that there's a ton of people behind the scenes and teams that work at Apple and other companies that honestly can't say they work on all this stuff. And so if you're listening or you happen to know anybody that works there, tell them they're doing an awesome job. Every time they come out with a new animation, the whole motion design world pays attention and just loves it. So to whatever artist or team that worked on this, you're the bomb. All right, so here's my version of it, and here's the scene. So you can see the hello script is here, and as we move the playhead, we have this nice little transition into the many L's with the rainbow. And so let me show you how at least I set this up. I don't know how they originally did it, but here's my approach. So first thing I did was bring in reference into the viewport here. And let's just jump over here. And I brought in reference from the original animation. This helped me trace the hello and try to get that script feel to it. So let me just turn off this geometry for a moment and show you just a basic version of how I got started. So I just grabbed the pen tool here. I think it's called the spline pen, and I started doing just some old school splines, right? So just click, drag, get these big handles, and I started tracing and trying to build it. Now I built this one weird because I knew that I needed it to curve up in front of the other one, and I'll show you that in a second. I built the little H, and I tried to use as few points as possible, and boom, boom, getting kind of close. You don't need this to be perfect, but it does take a little bit of practice if you haven't used splines before. For this one, I used 3 different ones, and I cheated this one because I didn't want to go identical, but I fixed it later, and then I just kind of pinched this one. Okay, so that may be great. Okay, that's close enough. I think you hit enter, or you just get out of this mode. So once you're in here, you can now click on your points and adjust them and try to fix them. Okay, so that's all good. But what happens with these pieces? What do we do when the overlap is happening? Well, this is where I jumped into different modes, like this overhead mode. And I'm not going to move my camera. Let's go ahead and not do that. And you can see from the overhead mode that our curve is all touching. And what you do here is you grab your splines and you start to adjust them so that they're not touching. So you want to adjust them front to back. In this case, I want to move this back. This H, again, we want it to go in behind and then in front. So something like this. Hopefully you can see that. And you can see now that it goes up and in and over. So you have to do this with all of your letters. Make sure you're adjusting them, pushing the curves up and then angling them so that everything gets out of the way. Okay, so you have to do that technique all the way across the hello. So let me just go ahead and turn off our spline, our little test one I just showed you. And let me show you the final one. So I'm going to turn off our end sides, and well, let's just leave it all on. You can see now what we're dealing with is the H is going behind and then down and in front. Now, it's still touching a little bit, and that's okay because we're cheating looking at it from the front. But if you really want to do the flip around effect, you could just push these splines even further back and ahead. You can see the L here is a nice big flip. The O is the spline gets pushed behind and in front. So a little sloppy from the sides, but as long as it looks good from the front, you should be okay. All right. So that's the basic setup. You want to get your basic script looking good and nice curves from the front. So let me go back to my front camera. That's step 1. Step 2 is breaking it into pieces so that you could do this L effect. Okay. And the L effect, I'm sure is done in a more elegant way in the original, because in the original they spin around it and everything's touching. I cheated my ass off, and that's okay. It's motion design, and sometimes you need to cheat, especially if you're trying to do this in half a day. So this is the technique. So from the front, this looks pretty good, right? But you can see if you slow down the animation, you can even see the little pieces right here. These little pieces right there are kind of showing the trick. And all this is a bunch of L's cloned and pushed apart. Okay, so from the back, it looks like this. There's all these L's, and then it's being hidden by the transition. So every L comes in, and then behind each next L, it is being overlapped, right? And it's hiding this break. And this means we don't have to be all perfect and connect these things. So you can see we start with one L that is cloned, essentially a bunch of clones sitting here waiting to expand. And then the clones push apart. The rainbow effect we'll get to. And then the word basically gets split into two pieces. These L's push apart, and then the rest of the letters follow over here. Okay, so how did we set this up? You can see the L and the O stay put. The other L's push over, and then the beginning of the word moves. So let's go back and just turn our camera back on. And let's talk about all the pieces. So you can see we have, let's just go bit by bit. We have our HE, which moves. Well, you know what? Let's go. Yeah, let's not look through a camera that's moving, just so you can see what's happening, because the camera moves as well. Here's the HE, okay? This moves with the L's when it's time, okay? That's all that's doing. Let's look at the LO. The LO stays there, okay? And I did this just by breaking apart the splines, just creating different splines. There's a spline for each piece, and I just took the original one that we just made, right? We did that little demo, and I broke it into 3 different parts. And then the big piece is the LLLL, right? This middle piece. So if I just turn off the other ones, this L is sitting here at the beginning, and this L is just, with the one spline with the same sweep on it. And all the little splines all the clones, I should say, are just sitting here behind it, basically hiding it, okay? And I push them back in Z space so that they're not given that weird overlap. If there's geometry overlapping exactly, it's not great. Cinema freaks out. All 3D programs freak out. You shouldn't have geometry that's exactly overlapping. So I pushed it back just to make a little bit of room. So if we look in the original cloner, it's back by 2 centimeters, okay? And this is animating with 5 different clones. And if we move forward, you're going to see now it is set to negative 67 and 1 centimeter in the Z, which just means our L's are pushed apart. Now, you could do this just with keyframes here in Cloner. I use Signal to make it easier to set my in and out points and my start and stop without resetting keyframes. So now you can see it's 0.02 centimeters and then negative 6.9, 0.1, okay? And this is a linear signal. I added an ease to it. That's a really strong, probably this one here where it's really fast and then it eases in. And then I set my start keyframe at 30 frames and my end keyframe at 66 frames. So you can see that right here. It pushes really fast and then it eases into that 60th frame. Okay. And I think that's about it for the L's. Okay. So now how do I get it to match the HE? Because you can see the HE moves exactly with it. Well, I duplicated the exact settings for Signal. This is why Signal could be really powerful, because if you start messing with curves and you want to match it in another curve, it can get a little tricky. With Signal, literally the settings are identical. The same ease curve, the same start and end point. And all I had to do was match the numbers. So if it moved 69 centimeters, then it should move that times 5 or whatever that is. And so you can do it by hand or you can do the math, but you can see it sticks exactly to it because we're using the exact same formula here in Signal. Okay, so if I were to set this easing to not exponential out and something like quad out, you'll see that those two now don't match. And this is what it would look like if I tried to keyframe it, because I'd have to match it exactly, and it would always be tough. But because we're using Signal here, we can just literally pick the same preset, exponential out, and if we change our spline path on one of them, we could just copy it and paste it into the other one. Okay, so there you go. That is the L with the HE, and then of course the LO. They do nothing. They just sit here and hang out, and everything else pushes against it. Okay. One last thing about the animation: the camera also moves. Okay. So if we go far enough back, you can see we're using a really far away camera. So we actually have a 128 focal length camera. I like using these really far cameras for these effects. And you can see the camera also moves just to recenter the animation. So if we go all the way back, turn on the camera, the hello is centered, and as it moves, we have a nice little effect here, and you'll never guess what. It's using the same exact preset again to match the same style of animation. Okay, so again, we're setting up our keyframes, and in fact, I did all of this linearly. So if we go to our major pieces of Signal, and I don't know if you knew if you could do this or not, but I animate with linear to make sure that it's just generally working. And I'm going to turn off Redshift just for now to get some better frame rate over here. So check this out. I do this first. I don't mess with timing or anything. I just want to make sure everything's roughly doing what I want. And then I essentially think about, like, what is the speed curve I want to happen? Do I want this to ease in and out? Well, I can grab all three of these signals, which are still selected, and just do this. So now it does like a ease in, ease out animation. Okay, cool. Let's test bounce in. Okay, well, that certainly isn't it. Let's test a stronger, like spring almost. It's like a whoop. That's interesting. It kind of breaks our L effect. That might be cool with like a smaller move. But you could just test all these. Now, I knew I wanted something that kind of exploded off the start line and then eased into its final piece. And this one wasn't enough, right? You can see these curves kind of get more and more aggressive as they go. I knew I wanted something more aggressive, and exponential just happened to be the one I clicked on. I was like, yeah, that's the move. It's like real snappy, and then it eases in. So picking multiple signals and kind of testing these animations is, at least for me, a way that I can test multiple things and kind of, again, like a lot of our tools, like play with them until it feels right, and then you're good. Like that's the whole point. Like stay in creative mode, play with it, and test a lot of stuff out and say, yeah, that's the one I want. So that's how that effect is done. Let's go to the texture. So how do you get a texture that goes from blue, all blue, to this really precise rainbow effect where each letter wants to like be a different color, essentially? And I thought about maybe per clone, trying to do that and then animating that. But I settled with what I think is kind of a more simple, straightforward approach. Here's the setup. Let's open this material and let me show you. Now I'm using Redshift here, but this should apply on any renderer you're using. I'm going to open up the nodes and just show you what's going on. So inside of here, you're going to see that it's a regular standard Redshift material. And there's some roughness on here. So you can see it's about 0.49 roughness. And I knew I wanted it to be a little bit more glossy than the original. The original has this really nice, super soft one that if you want to replicate that, you may want more roughness, but we're at about 0.5 around here. And then the real key is this color layer and the ramps and the blue. Okay, so what's going on here? So we're using a color layer to blend between a rainbow ramp, you can see the rainbow here, and the all blue ramp. And what we're doing is animating this color layer. Here's the mask. You can see there's a keyframe on it, and you can see there's just like a keyframe from 30 to 33. It's that quick to go from all blue to the full rainbow. All right, and so what is happening here? So let's look at our rainbow color. How did I make this? Well, I just used a ramp and plugged this all in. If you haven't used nodes, we have videos on YouTube all around on how to use these nodes. And made a ramp node And in the ramp node and the gradient, I went through and created this rainbow, a little bit from, I, and a little bit from color picking the original. So here's the original screenshot. Probably had this up on my desktop, and also started clicking on these and picking the eyedropper and grabbing colors from each one, like probably right around here where it's really saturated. And then I tweaked it to basically align a little bit closer to where my eye was with it. Some of the colors were off. Then I grabbed the actual placement of these and moved them until it was exactly on top of the L's. And Nick, you're probably screaming like, hey, I'm following along. It is not working at all for me. Like, how are you projecting this onto the letters? Well, thought about some UVs and some crazy parts, but this is really simple. This is the dumbest, simplest version of it. This is a flat projection. A flat projection essentially is almost like a camera projection, but it is projecting left to right exactly the gradient that you're seeing inside the nodes on your object. So if we go back into this ramp node, you can see literally if this gradient was stretched out along the whole object and then just stretched in the Y direction and just barfed out onto the hello, like I should say projected rather than barf, projected onto the letters, you will see that it's all blue up to here, just like that. Then it goes to green and yellow and goes across this whole gradient, and then it goes to blue again and it goes off. And that's exactly what's happening. So all I did was set up a projection right here. I think default is usually UV mapping. Go ahead and just switch that to flat. And then, of course, you'll have to grab your material scaler thing here. Let me move off my camera again and show you this. And you can see this rectangle. I don't know if you can see that. I'll just move it in front. This rectangle right here in front of the object is what is projecting onto the hello. So if I move this and I move it over, you see the rainbow is getting moved over. Now this exact one we're on is only for the HE, but you can see it's the same exact material and same exact effect for all of them. So if we go to the LO, move it over, you see now the LO, that's way over in the corner. Let me pick something more obvious like the L's. The L's are going to go all blue, and then now they're going to be all rainbow. You see that? Move it, blue, rainbow. Okay, so it's just a flat, literal flat projection. So you can see we have our rainbow version that is projected flat into here, and then we have our ramp blue that is just literally one node, and it's all blue. And the only thing that's keyframed is this. The mask changes from one to the other. That's it. Keyframe this. You could use signal here, but I thought like it's just going 3 frames. Let's just keyframe it real quick. And it's done. That is the whole trick there. Real simple, real straightforward. And it just blends between the blue and the rainbow. Okay, next, let's talk about the lighting. And then I'm going to show you a few little extra things and tweaks that I did to the scene to try to give it that extra little piece of polish there. So the lighting. Let's go and open it up. Let me turn off the other 2 lights and just talk about the HDR for a moment. So this is only the HDR. And this one, I think I'm using the Church HDR. It's one of my favorites for this kind of bright feel. Let me get the exact name for you. So it's called Church Entrance. If you're using Studio and you want to use it, just type in Church and it should pop up right here. Yeah, I'm making that one of my favorites. I use this one all the time. What I love about this one, if you can see this preview, let me open it up larger. This preview here, it's got this nice big opening and then a bunch of dark areas over here with these lights on the side. And it's just this perfect amount of brightness and like daylight feel. It's got a little bit of a blue in it. I just love the feeling of this one. So this is the one. If you're using Studio, you could just copy path and then make a HDRI light. In this case, it's a redshift dome light. Go into the path and you can just paste it right there. That's how that's in there. So that's the Church HDRI. And then I think I used Signal to animate it, and it's just rotating from more of like a rim light here. Like it's a little darker here. See how dark all the front pieces are, and you got this rim light. I'm animating it while it's opening to go more into a front light. And now it's off to the side, but it's more in the front. See how the reflection is like this white stripe there? And if I go back to the start, it's more of a rim light. That's all it's doing. So literally -4 degrees to 29 degrees. So 33 degrees. That's all it's moving. But just that is enough to go from a rim light into more of a key light off to the side. Okay, so that's the HDRI. That's doing most of the work. And this little rotation is just kind of adding a little bit of extra movement to the opening. And if you look at the original, they're doing some nice like rim lighting and stuff there too. So that was kind of there to emulate that without going all into it. Next one is a rim light. I'm just gonna turn on just the rim light. And you can see it's on throughout the whole animation. But let me turn off the top light. What I love about this rim light is what's happening here. So see this extra brightness in the back? This is literally happening because the light is hitting the backside of this front part of the L and bouncing into the back. We're literally getting these bounces. I loved how this kind of like see-through effect was happening. Almost like a subsurface scattering effect was happening with this light. So I just left it there. It's not animating or doing anything, but I just loved it. It's if you want to see where it is, you could download the scene file, obviously, but let's just go look at where it is too. So I think it's just a rim light off to the back. Yeah, it's like right there. Okay, sweet. All right, next light is the little kicker top light there. So this is just a little top light, give a little bit of extra reflection. I was really mostly going for a little bit of extra reflection off I love how it's like this little dot plus this rim. It's really these little hits here that I'm going for, okay? And this is just an area light, and it's up in the air. You could actually see it right there. It's a little disc light, okay? Real straightforward. And then all together, they combine to create this more dark start, and then boom, this more brighter opening. Okay, so those are the 3 lights. Now, I told you there's a couple little extra tricks here, and so that's in the environment. As I was lighting, I was liking the way it was looking, but the overall feeling was just a little bit too dark. So let me turn off our bounce cards here, and you can see what I'm talking about. This is where it looked like before I added the bounce cards. And to me, this happens a lot. So I wanted to share this trick with you guys if you come across it. It's like, hey, the lighting is looking pretty good, but I don't know, the bottom, maybe these bottom pieces are a little bit too dark. What do we do? There's a couple things you could do. You could add a new light and just put a light in there. But oftentimes, I like how a bounce card just takes existing lights. It doesn't add more light to the scene. I like using as few lights as possible to get the effect I'm trying to go for. And sometimes all you need is like, hey, in a real studio environment, these lights would have bounced off the floor. They would have bounced off a wall nearby. Sometimes all you have to do is add those walls. So that's what this is. So there's 2 bounce cards. This one I think is the floor. As soon as I turn it on, you can see the bottom brighten up there. Let me turn it off and on. Love it. You could really see it at the bottom get a lot brighter. And then the second one, I think, is off to the right, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, right here. So this is just filling in some of the side pieces. It's not doing a whole lot. You could probably move it up and get a more of an effect. But I just like these subtle bounce cards just to fill in some of the shadows and some of the gaps. When you want to brighten something up, but you don't really want to affect the overall feeling you already have, try adding a few bounce cards. All right, there's the breakdown of this scene file. Don't forget you could download it down below and follow along, or maybe recreate it yourself and make it say hello mom or something fun. Let me know if you make something fun with this. And if you have any more questions, put it in the comments down below. Maybe I missed something or I didn't go over something exactly. Let me know. I'm always happy to answer more questions. And of course, as always, if you see something that inspires you and is beautiful, go ahead and see if you could recreate it. It's one of the best things I do to learn new things, to kind of put new tools into my tool belt, and also remember stuff I've done.